Hey everyone, Omid here, your cloud guide from MENA Cloud Alliance. This is our Cloud Competitiveness Index 2021 series, where we review the cloud markets in the Middle Eastern and North African region. This one's about Egypt's cloud regulation. Remember the previous iteration of our Cloud Competitiveness Index? Well, back then, Egypt didn't really score well in the regulation domain, partly because the country's data protection law hadn't been introduced yet, and Egypt's intellectual property protection score was quite low. Things, though, have changed for the better in the Egyptian cloud market since then.
To assess the regulation domain, we look at four distinct pillars: data regulation, regulatory quality, green regulation, and intellectual property protection.
A little bit of context before looking at Egypt's cloud regulatory landscape in 2021. Egyptian government's cloud strategy, or EG Cloud, was introduced way back in 2014. Though the document outlines major initiatives, including a government cloud-first policy, we are yet to see such a policy introduced. A couple of years later, in 2016, Egypt's long-term strategic plan, called Egypt's ICT 2030 strategy, was launched, which clearly recognized the development of cloud computing as an important program. And in 2020, Egypt's Personal Data Protection Law number 151 was published, and a Personal Data Protection Center was introduced as the authority. Now, as far as cross-border data transfers, subject to a number of exceptions, the law contains a general prohibition on the cross-border transfer of personal data unless a license has been obtained from the Personal Data Protection Center, and where the level of protection in the destination jurisdiction is not less than that provided under the law. There is, however, no list of adequate regimes, which makes it unclear how that level of protection is to be assessed. While the introduction of a personal data protection law has significantly elevated Egypt's position in our data regulation measurements, uncertainty around international data transfers and a yet-to-be-released cloud-first policy have adversely impacted Egypt's score in our data regulation pillar. On the regulatory quality pillar, Egypt's scores have only slightly improved from our 2019 index measurements, but the country's performance on green regulation is very competitive, especially when it comes to renewable energy regulation, where, according to the World Economic Forum, it ranks 32nd globally. Egypt's investment law number 72/2017, which incentivizes renewable energy projects, is just an example of how seriously the country takes green regulation. Egyptian intellectual property protection score has also improved quite a bit from where it was back in 2019, though still relatively low compared with the rest of the region. Now, taking all that into account, Egypt's performance in our regulation domain has certainly improved since we last measured it back in 2019. There is, however, a number of indicators that could be improved, including the release of a cloud-first policy and clarity around cross-border data transfers. Also, countries' overall regulatory quality, especially public sector performance indicators, have room for improvement. And last but not the least, gains in intellectual property protection score would help elevate Egypt's position in our index's regulation domain.